2 balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. It's his way back. Walk the ball. Chris Taylor.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads Live, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Daniel Starkand. And Daniel, this one got dicey for a little bit, but the Dodgers pull out a 2-1 win over the Marlins, coming off sort of a rough Brewers series. Nice to get this one under the belt.
Yeah, we had a nice little pitcher's duel going tonight at Dodger Stadium. Offense has gone a little quiet the last few days, but pitching staff held it down, a couple of hits late, and it's a good win. It's a good way to start off the homestand. This is kind of a stretch where the Dodgers are playing, the Brewers and the Marlins, who, may not look like the best opponents, but they actually both have really good pitching staff. So it's kind of a good little test here for the Dodgers. And, they did enough to win. I think you tweeted about their struggles with runners in scoring position, which we'll get into. But, overall, not the best offensive night, but a good overall team win and some great plays late to seal it.
Yeah, and this is the key of being able to win in every phase. The Marlins are the perfect example of the issues that try and investing in one side. They had unbelievable pitching tonight from Luzardo. Their offense has been terrible. And I think Joe Davis had a stat. They've been averaging under 2.5 runs a game for the last month. Basically, that continues. They get great pitching, and yet the offense can't bail them out. The Dodgers also get great pitching, but the offense does just enough. The defense does just enough. Defense, the third phase of the game, where we see the Marlins, it costs them at the end. The Dodgers, on the exact opposite, it saves them in the end. And so lots to talk about this one. I mean, Evan Phillips gets the save. Was Craig Kimbrell down? I'm sure we'll get some quotes from Dave Roberts saying that he was, but that'll be an interesting talking point. Tyler Anderson continues to pitch well. Trayce Thompson, I tweeted he might be the second best outfielder the Dodgers have right now, but he's not playing as much as the second best outfielder should be. And then you've got Mookie Betts, who was just fantastic tonight. But let's start with just kind of a overview of how the Dodgers got here. Again, 2-1 victory over the Marlins is the story tonight. Bottom of the first, it looks like the Dodgers are going to strike early. Daniel, I thought this game was going to be, a nice, comfortable one for us. Mookie Betts, first pitch he sees, leadoff double smashed into left.
I lost your audio here, Jeff. I don't know if it's just me or if it's everyone, but I can't hear you right now.
Testing, we good there?
Oh, you're back now.
I got a notification that my somehow internet connection to my mic, which is plugged into my computer. I'm not entirely positive about how you lose internet connection to something that's just not connected to the internet. But
I'm sure you were saying some really great things. I just couldn't hear any of them.
Yeah, I mean, so Mookie gets on. The Dodgers go 0 for 3. Trey Turner, Freddie Freeman, and Will Smith with runners in scoring position. I was saying the Dodgers 6 for 33 in the 5 games coming into this one with runners in scoring position. They end up going 0 for 10 in this one, which is remarkable to win a game where you're 0 for 10 with runners in scoring position. And as I've hinted at, that continued to get worse. Trey and Freddie had runners on in the third. They go 0 for again. The Marlins, thankfully, in a similar boat, they strand runners in scoring position in the 5th inning, the 6th inning, and the 7th inning. However, before stranding that runner in the 7th, they do break through against Tyler Anderson, a 2-out, 0-2 double from their number 9 hitter, Encarnacion. His third career game makes it 1-0. I know there was talk, Daniel, about that pitch. It was a changeup. It was down. Yes, it was a strike. It didn't feel like a mistake in the sense that it wasn't middle. I mean, it was middle of the plate, but that was a pitch he was getting swings and misses on all night. You pitched at the college level. I mean, that's a pitch. I know everybody says that's got to be buried, but how big of a mistake was that? I don't know. It didn't feel, it felt like in an 0-2 count, it's a mistake, but it ended up being, to me, a good piece of hitting. I think that ball was 100 miles an hour off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, ideally you want it a little lower just because it's 0-2. You're trying to get him to chase. Like if that's a 3-2 pitch or a 2-2 pitch, then I think you're okay with it. But 0-2, you want it a little lower, try and get him to chase. But yeah, I think ultimately, I also think it was a good piece of hitting, and you got to give credit to that guy. It was only his second career hit. Joe Davis said his first career hit was a grand slam the other day, and now he hits a a go-ahead double at Dodger Stadium. So pretty cool moment for him. But yeah, I mean, Tyler Anderson, obviously he was sensational all night. So if we're gonna count that as his one mistake, then we can't complain too much. Like he's been obviously one of the unsung heroes of this team all season long. Another 7 strong innings tonight. Really can't say enough about what he's done for this team, honestly.
Yeah, it was a great moment for Encarnacion, and it's a moment that will be forgotten about very, very quickly because of what the Dodgers did. But you mentioned Tyler Anderson. He finishes today 7 innings pitched, 5 hits, 1 earned run, 3 walks, 6 strikeouts, 99 pitches. He allowed just 6 hard hit balls, a 39% whiff rate. A pretty remarkable night for Tyler Anderson. On the whole, we'll get to some more him, but he leaves the game after 7 innings, and you start to have this moment of, is he really going to take the loss in this one? He pitched that fantastically. He leaves in a 1-0 game. Surely the Dodgers are going to bail him out. Thankfully, they do. Justin Turner leads off the bottom of that inning with a single. The next 2 guys can't do anything, but then Trayce Thompson, a guy who played a non-existent role for the first 6 innings of this game and an absolutely incredible role the last 3 innings. He laces a double down the left field line. Justin Turner trying his hardest to get from first to home, probably gets a little bailed out by a throw. I'm not sure how close that play at the plate would have been if the relay comes in, but the left fielder somehow just completely misses the relay man. Another defensive miscue, and Trayce Thompson ends up on third. It's a tie game. Unfortunately, Gavin Lux rolls over a grounder, leaving Thompson stranded. Bottom of the 8th, Mookie Betts leadoff triple this time, thanks to a defensive miscue. The right fielder, Anderson, atrocious. Looks like he's going to try and catch the ball. I think it was Oral or Joe who said, that's a line you take on a 2 out. With 2 outs, not with nobody outs. It ends up with Mookie Betts standing at third. And again, Trey Thompson, Freddie Freeman, Will Smith with the runner in scoring position and nobody out. Surely they're going to score. Well, Trayce Thompson grounds out. Freddie Freeman intentionally walked. They intentionally walked to the janitor, Daniel. You know what happens when you intentionally walk to get to the janitor? A run scores. Now, how the run scored may be a little bit different than how you expect, but he rips a ball to third base, and it's a fascinating play because the third baseman makes a good play. He falls down as he makes it, sort of diving a little bit to his left, but it's hit hard. So the catcher immediately is thinking he's going to turn to double up Freddie Freeman and Will Smith, and the inning is going to be over. The third baseman, however, says, well, I'm not going to take any chances about whether we can actually turn this. I'm just going to throw home. The problem was the catcher's running up the first base line to back up the play. The third baseman is only looking to throw home, and as a result, the run scores. The Dodgers take a 2-1 lead, and nobody is out on the play. I've watched that thing 12 times, and I can't figure out who's more at fault. On one hand, my initial thought is, if you're the catcher, who cares about backing up first base? It's an irrelevant play. I know you're taught to do it, but in that situation, just stand at home plate. And yet, even as I say that, the right play is to turn the double play because with Freddie Freeman and Will Smith, that should have been a fairly straightforward double play. Where did you stand on kind of how that whole situation shook out?
Yeah, I think you just said it pretty well. Like, I think the right play was the double play. Like, he was going, the ball was hit towards second base. Like, if the ball's hit towards the line, I think it's a different story, but the ball's hit towards second base. It's Will Smith, at the plate, so it's not like he's a speedy runner. Like, they easily could have turned 2 there and got out of the inning with no run scored. So I think that's what the catcher was thinking. But kind of like you said, like at the same time, like really how important is backing that up? Like, and how far down the line is he even going to make it in the time it takes to turn 2? Like, in the small chance that the guy comes home, you can't just vacate home plate and let the time or whatever it was. The
go-ahead run.
It was the go-ahead run. That's the game-winning run there in the bottom of the 8th inning. Like, you can't just let that score. So, yes, the correct baseball play there is to turn the double play. But at the same time, if you're the catcher, you got to be ready for anything. And not letting that time or that go-ahead run score is way more important than getting halfway towards first base to maybe back up. What would have been a double play.
Yeah, I mean, if he makes if the catcher stays put, or if the third baseman tries to turn 2, both of those, based on where runners were, feel like you'd have to royally screw that up. I mean, Mookie Betts was halfway down the line. They would have had him out by about 6 feet. Again, the double play you expect, but they don't. It goes down as a fielder's choice. The Dodgers do take the lead. Then Justin Turner grounds out. Chris Taylor strikes out. And so even though Will Smith scores the run, that goes down as an 0 for 1, meaning, as I said, the Dodgers finish 0 for 10 with runners in scoring position. But hey, we're not going to remember that because the Dodgers win. And then the last piece of drama. I texted you when it was 1-1 and Mookie Betts standing at third, and I said, Kimbrel warming up, ? They hadn't shown the bullpen. There had been no report on Twitter about who was warming up. It ends up being Evan Phillips warming up. He comes in, a 1-2-3 ninth inning. Trayce Thompson, absolutely insane catch in center field, leaping up to grab a ball that probably wasn't going to go out, but definitely would have been for extra bases. Of course, there's going to be a storyline of what happened here. I'm sure Dave Roberts will say, hey, Kimbrel pitched twice 2 days ago, 3 days ago and 2 days ago. We rest guys. We don't pitch guys 3 times in 4 days, et cetera, which all could very well be true. But Craig Kimbrel, we know, struggled his last 2, did get the save in his second one, though. Evan Phillips comes on. And again, you could say 1-2-3, and that would be accurate. You could also say maybe a little bit of good defense behind him from Trayce Thompson to bail him out of what could have been a dicey situation. But do you make anything of the Evan Phillips in the ninth decision here?
I don't make a whole lot out of it. I mean, I will say it was nice to have, a stress-free ninth inning, like a closer that comes in and has, a clean inning. Like you said, though, I mean, obviously credit to Trayce Thompson for making that catch. If he doesn't make that catch and it's a ball off the wall or a home run or whatever, then we're sitting here having a very different conversation, obviously. But, at the end of the day, Evan Phillips has been that dude all year. Like, it's not surprising when you see him go in there and have success. Yeah. He hasn't really been in the ninth inning this season. But at the same time, he's been pitching the most important innings of the year, like for the Dodgers all season. Like, he's been that guy in the 7th, 8th inning, whatever it is, against the heart of the order, like the typical Blake Trinan role. So, like, shifting to the ninth inning isn't a whole lot different for him. I think everyone's in agreement that Evan Phillips is a better pitcher than Craig Kimbrel right now. Like, I don't think anyone's going to argue the contrary to that. But honestly, if there's a safe situation tomorrow night, I'm expecting Craig Kimbrel to be back in there. So I don't think there's a whole lot to make of it right now.
Speaking of closer situations, Laura's mentioning this in the chat. Looking on the Padres right now, Josh Hader entered the ninth inning in a 3-3 game. A run scores on an error, and then he gives up a 2-run home run. So one night after, I don't think he blew a save last night either. I think he came into a tie game maybe 2 nights in a row.
He came into a tie game with first and second, and hit a guy and walked a guy and gave up a hit. So, Josh Hader's Padres tenure is not off to the best start. Maybe my tweet comparing him to Kimbrel isn't looking so bad now. Huh?
Maybe it is looking bad. Maybe that was an insult to Craig Kimbrel.
Oh, we don't need to go that.
Padres losing 6-3 to the Nationals. I believe that would put them 18 games behind the Dodgers if that one finishes, which, 3-run lead in the ninth inning.
Might as well pop champagne for the division now.
Yeah, exactly. So let's get into this one. We always do something on here. By the way, we see folks saying we've missed you. Hey, it's good to be back. As most of you know, I took a 8-day vacation. It's sort of lined up with a couple days where we normally would be on here. So it's great to be back. I got to see the Dodgers a couple times. I'll talk about that with Matt on our show, which, by the way, Sunday night, we're going to go live at 9 p.m. That's going to be our normal rhythm for the rest of the year. Many of you have seen our hour-long sort of weekly preview shows that pop up on your feed Monday mornings. We're going to start recording those on Sunday nights at 9 p.m., and we're just going to go live. If anybody wants to join Matt and I, you are welcome to. Sunday nights, 9 p.m., and if you don't, guess what? It'll be in the exact same place at the exact same time on Monday morning like you're used to. But I do have a couple funny stories from my trip to Dodger Stadium to see the Twins, so I'm excited to share those. But let's get to players of the game from this one. I put it in the headline, Daniel. I think there's 3 pretty obvious candidates here. You could go Mookie Betts, who had 3 hits. You could go Tyler Anderson, who was fantastic. Or you could go Trayce Thompson, who had the game-tying hit and then the huge catch. Hard to pick between those because there's, Trayce sort of was at all of the big moments. Mookie Betts, of course, scores the go-ahead run. Tyler Anderson, 7 innings of dominant pitching. So where would you go for players of the game? And folks, if you're new joining us, please throw your player of the game in here. Mark, yes, 9 p.m. Pacific is Sunday night, but throw your player of the game in the chat. We'll throw it up as we talk through this one. But Trayce, Tyler Anderson, Evan Phillips, Mookie Betts, who do you want to go to for player of the game?
All really good options, but I got to go Trayce here. I mean, he drives in the winning run on a night where there wasn't a whole lot of offense going for either team. Then he makes, a game-saving catch in the 9th inning. Things could have gotten dicey there if he doesn't make that catch. Who knows? The game might still be going right now. So I think he gets player of the game, but I think Tyler Anderson is obviously a really good option as well. Another gem from him.
Yeah, I mean Anderson, getting into his numbers real quick. Joe Davis mentioned this, and I took a look. He mentioned how many changeups Tyler Anderson was throwing on the season. He throws about 32% changeups. Tonight he threw 45% changeups. He threw 45 changeups. He threw more changeups than fastballs, 2 more changeups than fastballs, and this is why he got 24 swings on his changeup. 11 of those were whiffs. I tweeted it looked like a knuckleball. I mean, guys were up there just swinging and whiffing at it. So really good stuff from Anderson. The knock against Anderson, I think, is, as much as we talk about the Dodgers struggling with runners in scoring position, Anderson did have a little bit of traffic on the bases. Nothing crazy, but he did allow 8 base runners in 7 innings. Few guys, 5th, 6th, and 7th, they strand runners in scoring position. I would actually lean Mookie Betts, as weird as it sounds, just because he kind of did everything he could have possibly done in this game. We're probably talking about him as an easy player of the game, if not for the Dodgers being unable to knock him in when he gets on base. I mean, he leads off the game with a double and gets stranded. He ends up with the triple to score the go-ahead run. And so I'd go with him. I think Thompson would be second for me, and then I think Anderson would be third. But those 3 guys, those are the head and shoulders above everybody else from the Dodgers. Chris Martin looked good. Evan Phillips looked good. Offensively, I'm looking through the box score. Justin Turner, Trayce Thompson, Gavin Lux, the only players to have a hit outside of Mookie Betts. Mookie Betts 3 for 4 with the double and the triple. Almost a home run, too, by the way. He got about as close to hitting a home run as you could possibly get without getting one. But some struggling nights. Trey Turner 0 for 3, Freddie Freeman 0 for 3, Will Smith 0 for 3. So an 0 for 9 in the 2 for 4 spots for the Dodgers. Chris Taylor 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. I want to talk about that in just a moment. Hanser Alberto 0 for 3 with the strikeout as well. So Jesus Luzardo, you got to give him credit, by the way. He pitched really well for the Marlins and looked nasty. And I kept laughing as they let him pitch and pitch and pitch. He gets to 100 pitches. I'm like, this team has nothing to play for, and you're just going to keep throwing this guy out there. Thankfully, he does end up putting it out. But Luzardo was pretty nasty. This is a guy that the prospect hype has been real on him, and you could see why. From the left side, throwing as hard as he did, it was pretty impressive.
Yeah, definitely. And like I kind of was saying earlier, like the last few days against the Brewers, and then this series against the Marlins, then the Brewers again, then the Marlins again. The Dodgers are facing, a stretch of really good starting pitching here. Obviously, we know who the Brewers have with Burns and Woodruff and those guys. You get Luzardo tonight, like you said, a former top prospect who looks, this season looks like he's really finding his way. They get Sandy Alcantara on Sunday, and then do it all over again, this upcoming week. So that's playoff, that's playoff type pitching they're facing. So even though these games aren't necessarily like important or anything for the standings, it's a good test for the Dodgers, and I think that's why. There was a stretch there a few weeks ago where the offense is putting up, 7-8 runs a game, and they're just cruising. But over these last few games, we're not necessarily seeing that. It's been kind of more grinded out type wins, more dogfights, low scoring games. And that's okay. You're not going to score 8 runs every night. But I think, overall, these are really good, tests to kind of get ready for the postseason. See some upper echelon pitching and hopefully continue to come away with wins.
Yeah. And just to clarify that, you mentioned the pitching. We also talked about Dodgers now have scored 15 runs in their last 6 games. Am I right in hearing you say that you're giving more of the blame, if so to speak, for that to the pitching the Dodgers have faced? Or do you see issues or questions that you have with the Dodgers offense?
I don't want to say issues. Like, obviously, we still know how good this team is.
Yeah.
You like them to be better with runners in scoring position, I'd say. Like, it's not like I still feel like guys are getting on base, guys are putting together good at bats, but like you just mentioned a couple minutes ago, like Trey Turner, Freddie Freeman, and Will Smith were all 0 for tonight. So if that's the problem with the offense, then I'm okay saying that's gonna turn around. Like, those guys are gonna come through more often moving forward. Mookie's getting on base all night. It was just a case of no one really could drive him in. I think it's definitely a credit to the pitching, but I also think it's just one of those stretches where you're going to go through them over the course of a 162 game season. And I know once you come out of this stretch where you're facing the Corbin Burnses, the Alcantaras, the Luzardos, and then I don't know who the Dodgers play after that, but once you're facing some better pitching, I would expect the runs per game to go back up again.
Yeah, and I mean, I always say, if you're going to complain about the Dodgers going 0 for 10 with runners in scoring position, you also have to acknowledge that they were able to get 10 at-bats with runners in scoring position. Like, those, if you're going 0 for 3, that's a problem. 0 for 10, 1 for 7, those types of things, it just tells me the sequencing is a little bit unlucky. And as you said, combined with the pitching they're going against, so be it. I joked, look, if you lose to the Brewers, it's fine because it hurts the Padres. You just can't lose to the Marlins. And guess what? They didn't lose to the Marlins. They won 2-1 tonight. Let's switch gears and talk about something some folks in the chat are talking about, which is Trayce Thompson. Tien says Trayce Thompson needs to be in the daily lineup. This is something that I've been tweeting about as the game was going on tonight. So let me ask you a question, Daniel. Who are the Dodgers' best outfielders right now? You look at Trayce Thompson's game log and didn't play yesterday, and you go back even just to the beginning of August. I mean, lots of off days in here. Some of these are team off days, of course, but this is not a guy who's playing every day. He's playing, maybe two out of every 3 games or something, which isn't terrible. But this is a guy with an OPS over 900 now, I believe, on the season. Mookie Betts, right field, no questions asked. Trayce Thompson, in my book, I said he's the second best outfielder the Dodgers had. And I would add, by the way, that defensively he was fantastic tonight. Not just the catch that he made at the wall, but there were a number of catches that he made where I was like, wow, quick adjustment, good read by Trayce Thompson. I'm not saying I want him in center field, that he's better defensively than Cody Bellinger or anybody else. To be perfectly clear, Chris Taylor made an unbelievable catch in center field the other night. The Dodgers have some options. They've got Cody Bellinger, they've got Trayce Thompson, they've got Joey Gallo, they've got Chris Taylor. Who are the Dodgers' best outfielders right now?
I mean, the way Trayce has been playing, it's hard not to say it's him, but he doesn't have the track record that some of those other guys have, so you're not exactly sure. Like, we've kind of been saying it ever since Trayce came over here and just started gnashing from the beginning. Like, we're just kind of like, all right, like, how long is this going to last? He had that one stretch where he slumped a little bit and then just picked it right back up and has been going ever since. And like you said, he's not playing every day, so he's kind of in and out of the lineup, which kind of makes it even harder to sustain like any sort of hot streak. But he's been doing it. Any opportunity he's been getting, he's come through. It's funny, most of his playing time is against lefties, when if you look at the numbers, he's been mashing against righties and struggling against lefties. So I'm not sure I exactly understand that. I guess I get that, like, if Cody Bellinger and Joey Gallo are going to play, it's going to be against righties. It's not going to be against lefties. So I guess that's just where the opportunities are. But I mean, the more Trayce continues to play the way he has, like, if he can sustain that, then I'm with you. I think he's their second best outfielder at that point. So I would expect if he keeps hitting, that playing time is going to continue to go up. I mean, they just gave Cody that little 2-day reset or whatever. He's been struggling. Joey Gallo has actually been really good since coming over.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see Gallo in the lineup against righties just to kind of see, like, is what he's been doing legit? Is it just the flash in the pan or whatever? But I mean, if you're going off strictly production, I don't really think there's much of an argument that Trayce is the second best outfielder right now.
Yeah, and I think the question then becomes how you weigh defense, because I think Mookie and Trayce need to be in there, and so then the question comes, where is Trayce Thompson playing? He played a really competent center field tonight, and if he can play center field anywhere close to what he did tonight, then that gives you some options about Chris Taylor, Joey Gallo in left field. But if you feel better about Trayce Thompson in left field and you want to keep Cody's glove in the game in center field, then I get that as well. And so for me, I think if it were me, I would leave Trayce Thompson in center field and let him do what he did tonight. And then I would platoon Chris Taylor and Joey Gallo, which leaves Cody Bellinger as the odd man out. Because, I mean, Gallo's gives you great defense all across. If you trust Trayce, which is a big one. If you trust Trayce, that gives you great defense. Joey Gallo, Chris Taylor, both really high-level left fielders. But it leaves Cody out, and I think the way he's been hitting, he has to be left out, right? Like, am I missing something? Like, I would platoon Gallo and Thompson and Taylor, and I would let Trayce play center. Because, as you said, they're treating Trayce like he's a platoon guy. He's mashing everything.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the one thing is, like, playoff experience. If you want to talk about that, I don't know. Some people believe, that's a thing. Like someone like Cody, who has been in a lot of playoff games, had a lot of big moments in October, as we saw last season, was completely absolutely lost during the regular season, but still found his way in October. So I guess that's the argument again this year. He's just, when Cody is right, he's a game-changing, difference-making player. But I mean, right now he's not right. So I mean, we'll see where he's at in October. We still got a month and a half here, so I think a lot can change between now and then. But like, if the playoffs were starting today, I think Trayce should be in there every day. The way he's been hitting, he's earned it. I agree with you. I think the Gallo, Chris Taylor platoon makes a lot of sense. I also think, Chris Taylor is a guy who can move around and kind of fill in wherever you need. Like, even he could play center. We saw, obviously, he makes that insane catch in center. So
yeah,
I think defensively, even without Cody, I still think they're good enough in the outfield. I think Cody is the best defensive outfielder of the bunch, but I think the way Trayce has been hitting, I think his defense is passable, and I think a platoon of Gallo and Chris Taylor, that gives you above average defense as well. So I don't think defensive, is an issue. If you think you could get that big of a difference offensively, which if you look at the numbers, like Trayce Thompson has been a significantly better offensive player than Cody Bellinger, then you take the slight downgrade defensively.
Yeah, so Trayce Thompson, for context, since he's become a Dodger, has 153 weighted runs created plus. That's in 41 games, 123 plate appearances. So we're talking about, a sample size that is growing. I'm not saying it's definitive. I'm definitely not saying that I would bet my entire paycheck on Trayce Thompson sustaining what we are seeing right now. But that's where we're at. On Cody Bellinger, on the other hand, we all know. I mean, in his last two seasons, 201 games, 2021 and 2022, 201 games, 771 plate appearances. His weighted runs created plus is 67. It's 82 this year, but again, we've seen a sustained level of disappointment. Now, the glove is as good as it is, but when a guy like Thompson hits like he's hitting and plays a competent enough level defense, you put the two together, and it feels to me like the scales are tipping. Now, all of that said, I think it's important to note what Max Muncie has done, and I believe, and I'm sure you believe as well, that they're going to give Cody Bellinger every chance he has to figure this thing out. Because as I said all along, if they think there's a 25% chance that Max Muncie figures this thing out come playoff time, and they've got a 20-game lead in the division, they're going to keep trotting Max Muncie out until he figures it out. Well, guess what? Max Muncie sure seems to have figured it out. Didn't play tonight, but is like one of the 7 to 10 best players in baseball in the month of August thus far. I think they're going to do the same thing with Cody Bellinger. I know they're giving him this reset, but are you expecting a significant decrease in Cody's playing time, or do you think they just keep giving him a chance to do this thing, Daniel?
No, I don't think there's going to be a decrease, and I don't think there should be. Like, look at the division lead. These are not do or die games here. This is basically the next month and a half is a big experiment to figure out who's your best team for the postseason. And like, I know they wanted to give Cody his little reset for a couple days or whatever, but just sitting him on the bench is not how you're going to at least get him sort of right for the postseason. So he's a guy with a track record that's big enough that you're going to trot him out there in hopes of, if he could get right or not. And if he can't, then so be it. Then you have a bench bat and a defensive replacement, which is still a really good thing to have on your roster in October. But right now, when the Dodgers are cruising and winning every day, I wouldn't expect any drastic measures. It's the same thing with the Kimbrel situation, right? Sure, we all loved what we saw out of Evan Phillips tonight. We all loved not being stress-free in the ninth, but at the end of the day, these games are I don't want to say completely meaningless, but for the most part, they don't mean a whole lot. We're trying to get ready for October. That's the goal in mind right now. And when guys have upside and they're not right now, I know in your head you want to look short-sighted and say this guy's not playing well, bench him. But if there's even a small chance that they could get right, then you keep running them out there. And at the end of the day, if they don't, then you don't run them out there in October when the games actually do matter.
Yeah, which Dave Roberts has said, by the way, he is planning on doing specifically with the closer role, and you would assume that the same thing is going to happen with the outfield. So something to keep an eye on. Do they continue to give Trayce Thompson regular at-bats? at whose expense does Cody Bellinger keep getting trotted out there? Because the thing with Muncie is he wasn't really taking at-bats away from anybody else. The issue with putting Bellinger out there every day is you'd like Trayce Thompson to continue getting regular at-bats, not to lose his rhythm. You want to see if you can figure out Joey Gallo, because he's basically the Bellinger 2.0 experiment of can he figure some things out. And Chris Taylor is coming back from injury. So all of those guys are guys that you want to give regular at-bats to make sure that they can get things going. So we'll see how that happens. By the way, shout out to our guy, Sean Spaces Davis, for giving us a super comment, throwing us a couple bucks. We appreciate the support. It means a lot to us to have people throw comments like that and throw us a couple bucks. So thank you to Sean, and thanks to everybody in here for tuning in. Let me shift gears a little bit real quick. There was an interesting LA Times update about Clayton. I shouldn't say LA Times. Clayton Kershaw update. The LA Times had some good information on it. DodgerBlue.com, of course, we did as well. But the update was Clayton Kershaw threw off a bullpen mound on Friday, the first time since going on the injured list. He had a 30-pitch workout that put him on track for a early September return, would not need a rehab assignment. Quote from Dave Roberts, to go through the MRI process and nothing new was found to be asymptomatic is very encouraging. Look, we don't know what we're going to get out of Kershaw. We were here a year ago with an injury and not sure what we can get. But look, any bit of positive news we'll take.
For sure. And I think the Dodgers know that they got to be cautious here because you only have one time to get this right? Like if he starts building up and then has a setback, we're running out of time here. We're a month and a half away from October. He's going to need some time to get built up. So you really only have one chance to get this right. And he's dealt with this back stuff before. So they know what they're dealing with here. They're not going to rush him back. But the fact that he's throwing bullpens already is a good sign that it wasn't, any sort of long-term deal. Like we're, only a couple weeks out here and he's back on the mound again. That's great to see. With the recent Walker Buehler news, Kershaw is a guy that, even though he's not healthy now, they're depending on to be one of their guys in October. So, we'll see where he goes from here. I'm sure it's going to be another bullpen probably, and then he'll probably do a sim game or whatever. But if he's on track for an early September return, that's perfect. That still gives him 5 starts or whatever to get built up and ready for the postseason. So, just a case of sitting here and hoping and praying that he doesn't suffer any sort of setbacks. And everything goes, swell moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I think you mentioned this, but Dave Roberts did clarify that Evan Phillips only pitched today because he had not pitched in 2 days. Craig Kimbrell was down, and that if there was a safe situation moving forward, Craig Kimbrell, he would be back in the game tomorrow if the Dodgers need it. But yeah, I'm with you on Kershaw. I mean, it brings up an interesting conversation because, part of the thing when Kershaw went down was this conversation of how many guys in the rotation do you actually trust? Tony Gonzalez was in the middle of a rut. There's people questioning what Tyler Anderson can give you. I think Urias is the one guy you look at and say, the guy's been fantastic. He's peaking at the right time, dominant. You've seen it before. Boom. So you got Urias in there. Then there were some questions, but now all of a sudden you're looking at the rotation. Look, this is the Marlins. We get it, but Tyler Anderson continues to pitch incredibly well. Tony Gonzalez has rattled off, I believe, 4 consecutive really good starts. Dustin May is due back tomorrow, who we'll talk about in just a second, and absolutely dominated his way through the minor leagues. Then you've got Kershaw due back in early September. And, oh, by the way, Andrew Heaney has looked really good. I know he gave up a handful of runs against the Brewers, but he struck out like 12 guys in 5 innings or less than 5 innings or something like that. So all of a sudden, it's sort of like this roller coaster with the Dodgers. They have too much pitching. They don't have enough pitching. They have too much. Don't have enough guys you trust. Where are you at with Kershaw coming back, May coming back, the way Heaney's looked, the consistency of Gonzalez and Anderson? I mean, like, where are you at on the Dodger pitching as we look forward to the postseason? Like, are you feeling good about where things stand? Because we've had lots of conversations about, did the Dodgers make a mistake not adding a starting pitcher?
Yeah, I feel great about where they're at right now. I think that's counting on Kershaw coming back. I think if there's another injury to any of these main guys, I think that's when things maybe get a little dicey. Talking about the trade deadline, outside of Luis Castillo, like there wasn't really any big needle movers that actually got traded. And I think for the most part, the starting pitching market, there's a lot of overpays. So, it was not a cheap market. So I think unless you're going to go out and get Luis Castillo, like if you look, the second best guy that got dealt was Frankie Montes, and he's been just getting rocked with the Yankees. So I think if you look at the guys the Dodgers have right now, I think they're in really good shape. I think, you mentioned Gonzalez and Anderson. Like, I think we could put all the question marks to bed about both
Yeah.
of those guys, honestly. Like, I think they're both great. Julio, like you said, he's been the best. and no one has talked about it all year pretty much. Like, I know we have, but not like nationally. Like, you haven't heard his name mentioned once, but he's been incredible. So that's 3 solid guys right there. If you get Kershaw back, that's a 4th. And like you just mentioned with Dustin May, like, he's the big wild card in all of this, because if he looks anything close to what he was pre-injury, and like you said, he's been looking really good in his rehab outings, and that's a huge weapon to have. So I'm really looking forward to tomorrow's game, and I'm sure we'll get into that, but I'm really looking forward to that, to see what he can contribute. And then Andrew Heaney would be the 6th guy if everything goes right with all those guys. So I still think they're in really good shape. I do not think they're missing Mitch White, as a lot of people have said to us over the last couple of weeks. I do not think that's the case. I think they're in good shape. Obviously, you don't know what injuries are going to happen. Like, you can't really forecast that. So in that sense, I get why people are concerned, because they're 1 or 2 injuries away from things getting really dicey. But I think with the division lead, with the the luxury they have of not necessarily having to win every game, I think they could go with a 6-man rotation, which is what they're doing right now. Like, Dustin May's coming back, but Ryan Pepio is still starting Sunday. They're giving guys extra rest. Hopefully that keeps them fresh. That's really all you could do. Like, you can't. It's not like you could just put guys in bubble wrap and wake them up in October and say, let's go. As much as we all wish that's the case, you just kind of got to hope for the best. But I think, as currently constructed, I still think the starting rotation is in really good shape.
Yeah, I mean, the way I put it to Matt is you need 4 starters come the postseason. They've got 6. So, I mean, they would need 3 injuries, basically. And if I'm including Kershaw in the 6. So they would need 2 additional injuries beyond Kershaw to get to a point where Ryan Pepio is starting a postseason game. We're nowhere near that. Now, with that said, Alleluia asks a good question. Not enough pitching with the new playoff format. Have you discussed it? Great question. The answer is yes. Matt and I put up a video talking about the new playoff format and how things have gotten a little condensed because of the lockout, and how basically the back half of these series, there are no travel days. There are no days off. And so we both said this is a huge advantage for the Dodgers. We just talked about them potentially having 6 guys that you trust to some degree. I know there's some people in the chat that aren't big Andrew Heaney fans, and I don't blame you to say that. But at the same time, as a number 6 starter, as a guy that maybe Dustin May, Andrew Heaney, a piggyback, righty, lefty, both of them nasty, throwing a lot of swing and miss, there's a lot there. And so all of that in the condensed format, I think, is an even bigger advantage for the Dodgers. You agree?
I agree 100%. I think if we're sitting here concerned about, the Dodgers starting pitching depth, then I think if you look across the league, pretty much every team could complain about their starting pitching depth. So I agree. I think the less off days, the better for the Dodgers, just because their whole staff, like, overall, they have the most depth. Like, even if, let's say, the Dodgers had to go with the bullpen game, like, in the middle of one of these series, like, they could get by with that. Like, we've seen them do well with that in the past. Like, so that's, like, I know that's not ideal. Ideally, you'd like to have a starter who gives you 5-6 innings every time out. But if you're in a pinch and you have to go to a bullpen game, then I think that's something the Dodgers have maneuvered before and had success. So I agree with you. I think, the less off days, I think you'll see when comparing the Dodgers' overall pitching staff, when you're looking at starters, when you're looking at maybe starters that could end up in the bullpen as multi-inning weapons, and then you look at the back-end relievers and such. I think just the Dodgers, their overall staff depth really fits that format well. But also, as far as that format goes, like, I think this is the second time MLB has done this where they do not tell the teams what the format is before the trade deadline. So you look at a team like the Yankees, like, they know they're in the postseason already. They think, hey, we only need 4 postseason starters. We could trade our 4th or 5th starter, Jordan Montgomery, and pick up an outfielder because we're not going to need him in the postseason. Well, guess what? 2 weeks later, MLB, you're actually going to need that 5th starter. So that, I think it's kind of weird how they don't, you don't go into the trade deadline knowing how many starters you're going to need in the postseason. But I think overall it's a net advantage for the Dodgers, so I'm not complaining too much.
Yeah, it's par for the course for Major League Baseball. And I would just add that the depth of the bullpen is the same boat. There's lots of teams that probably have 2, 3, 4 guys maybe even that they really trust in their bullpen. The Dodgers are going to go 8 deep if some of these guys come back healthy. Trinans, the Gratterols, Yency Almonte, some people asking questions about him. But, I mean, if they get some of those guys back and you're replacing the Phil Bickfords of the world with guys that you have incredible amounts of trust in, all of a sudden the Dodgers are going to go 8 or 9 deep in the bullpen as well, the way David Price and Caleb Ferguson and those types have been pitching. And so I think between the two of those, if you've got to throw every single day, the Dodgers can give you 3 to 4 different relievers 2 days in a row and feel good about all of them, which would be a huge advantage. So interesting stuff. Again, Matt Moreno and I put up a video recently. Check out Dodger Blues YouTube page and check that out. We posted that, I believe, on Thursday. So good stuff there. Let's get to some questions. If you're in the chat and you've got a question about anything, again, the show has sort of been offline for a couple of weeks, so I'm sure we got lots to talk about, lots of opinions to have. Throw those in the chat. We'll get to those. Let me ask you about Max Muncy and where you're at on him. I have been following the Dodgers, of course, but not necessarily, checking stats every single day. And I looked this up today. Max Muncy in the month of August, again, did not play today. 14 games, 11 extra base hits. That's 6 home runs and 5 doubles. He's got an OPS of 1184, a 223 rated ones created plus. That's third in Major League Baseball in the month of August. He's put up 1 win above replacement. That's ninth in Major League Baseball. I've kind of held out hope all season. I lost optimism the last couple of months, if I'm being honest, on Muncy. Is this a fluke or is Muncy back? Fabian Ardaya, The Athletic, had a great piece about what changed and how confident he's feeling. There's a little shuffle with the back foot. Are you in? Is Muncy back?
I hesitate to always just be like, yeah, he's back. Just because I feel like every time we do that, we then see a 1 for 18 stretch immediately to follow. So I'm not gonna say he's back, but in my head, I'm definitely thinking it. That's for sure. He's looked great, like you said. He's made some adjustments. He's moving his back foot a little more. That's kind of something you see Nolan Arenado do, and he's had a lot of success with it. So I guess, hey, if it's working, no need to change it. Keep it going. But I think the biggest thing is he's back to punishing the mistakes. We know he's got a great eye. We know he's going to stay in the zone. He's not going to swing at balls. So if guys are making mistakes in the zone, then you got to punish it. And I think for a majority of the year when he was struggling, we were seeing him swinging through, those pitches right in the, center. We were seeing him take a lot of those pitches, which was very uncharacteristic of him. Now we're seeing him starting to punish those. We're seeing him hitting home runs. We're seeing him, hitting doubles in the gap. So it's great to see. I think obviously he dealt with the injury. The elbow issue was not. It was it was a serious injury. It wasn't nothing. So it wasn't surprising to see him get off to a cold start to the year. I think obviously the slump prolonged a little longer than anyone would have hoped. But I think this lineup it adds a whole new dynamic when you got Muncy in the middle there swinging the bat well. And I think that's kind of what we've seen recently. The Dodgers are winning almost every day, and I think Muncy's been the difference in a lot of them. So it's great to see, and just hope it continues.
Yeah, I think the thing with a guy like Muncy is I've seen enough consistency over the years that when something like this happens, I ask myself, which is the fluke? Is it the fact that he was one of the worst hitters in baseball, or the fact that he's been great for the last month? And the last 3 years of his career tell me that the fluke is the struggles. And so when a guy like that turns it around, I'll believe it a lot quicker when there's not an obvious answer otherwise. A guy like Justin Turner had struggled, and I was like, well, he's getting up there in age. Is that the thing? Muncy is not in that situation. We've seen the success. He had the injury, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm a believer. Of course, he's not going to do what he's doing right now. The tear he is on now isn't sustainable. I'm not predicting a 1,200 OPS from here on out for Max Muncy. But, man, if he figures it out, that is an absolute game changer, because we've talked about the first 4 guys in the lineup. If Muncy is back to Muncy, he's a 5th. Justin Turner's been really good, not great, but I would say really good, 6th. You've got Gavin Lux, 7th, Trayce Thompson, 8th, and all of a sudden you're just saying Chris Taylor, Joey Gallo, Cody Bellinger. Can we get one of these guys to figure something out? If we can get any level of competent play from one of the three of those, all of a sudden it's not just a deep 1 through 4, 5, 6. It's a 1 through 9 for the Dodgers lineup. So interesting to see what happens there. We'll rapid fire a couple relief pitcher ones. Will asks, why is Maranta still with the team? I think the answer is pretty simple. They've got a bunch of guys who are injured. Maranta will be the first guy sent down, is my guess, once a Blake Trinan or a Brusdar Graterol becomes back. Victor Gonzalez, by the way, started a rehab appearance with AAA. I don't expect that to be a short rehab appearance, but he was a guy who looked good in spring training, looked like he had figured some things out. Obviously, it was spring training, but they've got a lot of guys that are due back. Danny Duffy will not be one of them, but they've got some guys due back, so anything you would add? I mean, Maranta is there in my estimation because he's just holding the place for some of these injured guys.
Yeah, I mean, do you prefer Justin Brule? I mean,
yeah,
he's the last guy on the roster pitching the lowest leverage of innings. Someone's got to eat these innings. I mean, we got, like you said, there's a lot of injuries. So once those guys come back, I'm not expecting Is Maranta on the postseason roster pitching high leverage innings. It's August 19th. That's all I could really say to that.
Yeah, I think the bigger question is who else gets sent down. Like Phil Bickford's a guy who has struggled mightily this season. He's actually looked pretty good the last couple appearances for him. But there's 3 or 4 guys that are not currently on the active roster who we would expect to be on the playoff roster. So one of those guys, Eric's got a question about that's what's going on with Yency Almonte. Matt Moreno, our guy, tweeted earlier today that he won't that Roberts said that Almonte likely won't return until the second week of September. His recovery has progressed slower than the Dodgers expected. He also added that Almonte didn't throw today, but will start throwing again tomorrow. Has not gotten off a mound yet. Second week of September at the earliest. But that's one of those guys that, if he can get healthy the way he was pitching, you would expect him to be on the postseason roster. So we'll see. Speaking of postseason roster, Alleluia asks, Hanser Alberto, does he get a spot in the postseason roster? Is cheerleading enough to keep him for the playoffs? Here's the good news. He could be a cheerleader and not be on the postseason roster at the same time. So it begs the question, is Hanser Alberto on the postseason roster in your estimation, Daniel?
I mean, we'll see. I think as of now, if you look at the position players, as far as the postseason roster goes, the guys they have now are pretty much what they got. I think the one guy on the outside looking in is obviously Edwin Rios. So he's really the only one that would take, Alberto's place, unless maybe if Miguel Vargas goes off in the last month at AAA, then maybe he enters the picture. But I don't know. I think if they kept him off the roster in favor of a Vargas or an Eddie Rios, I probably would be in favor of that, to be honest. I think those guys have more to contribute. But I don't necessarily see them doing it. I don't know. We'll see. I think, we'll see if everyone stays healthy and then you have to make that decision. I guess that's a good problem to have. But, I think that's a fair question to ask. Yeah,
I'm with you. I mean, Alberto provides you defense that none of those other guys do. Like, if you're looking for a guy who can come in and play competent defense, the caveat to that is, do you really need that guy on your roster? Like, is that more important than having a bat? Now, the flip side is with the DH.
When you have Chris Taylor as well, who could fill in those infield spots as well.
Yeah, the flip side is, does the extra bats off the bench really matter that much? If you've got a lineup like the Dodgers where who are you taking out? Like, Justin Turner's not going to get pinch hit for. Like, Gavin Lux isn't going to get pinch hit for. So who are you really platooning? Like, who is Edwin Rios coming in to pinch hit for late in the game? I don't really see anybody that fits that mold. And so do you need all 3 or 4 of those bench spots for offensive guys? Maybe you keep a guy like Alberto around. I don't know who he comes in for defensively either, but I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is I don't think the last bench spot is going to matter all that much. If it were up to me, it wouldn't be Alberto. I would take a guy like Rios because his ability to change a game with just one swing would be the advantage to me. But I could see it going either way. Postseason roster, sticking with it. I like this question from Roger. Do you have a big hot take prediction about the postseason roster, Daniel? Anything that comes to mind? I mean, we just talked about who gets the last bench spot. I think the bullpen spots are interesting. Do you want to go Craig Kimbrell doesn't make the postseason roster? You got any flaming hot takes for us?
I mean, I'm not making the decisions, so I think my answer would be different if I was making the decisions. I think, given who is making the decisions, I don't think Craig Kimbrell's in danger just yet. I think he's still He's still got a month and a half here to audition, and then we'll go from there. I don't think, I think maybe if he continues to struggle, then it becomes a conversation. But I just don't think we're there yet. Especially when we'll see when these guys come back healthy. Like you said, I mean, if Treinen and Gratterall and Almonte, those are 3 high leverage guys that if they're all coming back healthy, then I think we could have the Kimbrel conversation. But until that happens, right now we're looking at a roster that includes Is Maranta and Phil Bickford. So I don't think Kimbrel is the low man just yet. But who knows? We'll see when those guys come back.
I keep saying it. The postseason bullpen is going to be fascinating because if the Dodgers take 13 pitchers, which we would expect them to do, how many starters do they take? Like if Kershaw is back and everybody's healthy, does Andrew Heaney make it? I mean, his ability to miss bats, I don't see how he doesn't make it, especially in a situation like the postseason where it feels like you can just never have enough starters because you never know what's going to happen. So then if you take 6 starters, you're left with only 7 relievers. Well, if Blake Treinen is back, and then you've got Gratterall and Vesia and Phillips and Price and Ferguson and Almonte, I just, all of a sudden we're running out of space on the postseason roster for guys. I'm sure Kimbrel is a guy I didn't mention. Chris Martin is a guy I didn't mention. There's 9. I just named 9 relief pitchers. I named 15 pitchers. They only have 13 spots. And so does Chris Martin, a guy they just traded for who started to look good, gets a 1-2-3 inning today, does he not make the roster? Is Vesia or Gratterall, is one of them potentially in danger? Vesia's numbers haven't been that amazing. He's struggled of late. Gratterall's been a little bit up and down. So I guess the question of, do I have a hot take? I just think there's going to be some surprise from people who haven't done the math on what they're going to do in the bullpen. I wouldn't be shocked if a guy like Andrew Heaney doesn't make it, but the way David Price has pitched, how could you not put him on the roster right now? The way Caleb Ferguson has pitched, how do you not put him on the roster? Those are both lefties. Let me ask you this question, Daniel. Ferguson, Price, and Vesia, all left-handed pitchers. Rank those 3 for me, who you trust the most and who you trust the least. Is Vesia third on that list?
You could ask 3 people and you'll get 3 different answers. I mean, Ferguson's probably at the top. He's been phenomenal. And I know David Price has been better than Vesia, but I still would take Vesia just because of his ability to miss bats. But they've all been really good. And David Price, a lot of people, sometimes ourselves included, sometimes like we spent a lot of the season, trashing him and saying, he keeps saying he's not making the postseason roster, but meanwhile he just keeps pitching really well. So, these are good problems to have. If you have too many good arms, it's definitely better than not having enough. But yeah, it's going to make for some interesting decisions, and who knows? We'll see what injuries happen. So a lot of the times these things kind of work themselves out. But like you said, are they going to have starters in the bullpen, or are they going to stick with the good relievers they have? It's a fascinating topic that, I mean, I still think, as much as we want to talk about it now, we're still too far away, in my opinion. A lot could change between now and October, as far as health, as far as who's producing at what level. Like, there's so much that can change in a month and a half. But it's good problems to have.
Yeah, just real quick. I mean, look, I was the guy that said they should DFA David Price before the season to make room on the roster, okay? So I'm not like the biggest David Price guy in the history of the world.
I've said some similar things, so I'm not trying to,
David Price's ERA is basically a full run lower than Alex Vesia's. He has not allowed a run in his last 12 appearances. How about this one? Has not allowed a hit in his last 8 appearances. Now, when I talk about 12 appearances and 8 appearances, some of these are we're talking about full innings most of the time, but a couple of those outings are 1 2/3. When I say he hasn't allowed a hit in 8 innings, the 9th outing was 1 2/3, and he allowed 1 hit in that one. So pretty remarkable stuff from David Price. Look, he's a guy who's been there in big moments. I don't know what to do with David Price. I guess I would just say I love Vesia. I love the energy. I love the excitement.
Same.
I think there's going to be a lot of competition for that spot. And if you were in a World Series game and the pressure was on and you needed a lefty to come in, David Price has been there. He's a vet. Now, Vesia has been there too, but the emotional stuff is an incredible thing, and there's no downside to it. With a guy that young, I just wonder if they say, and I think knowing Dave Roberts as well as we do, having seen him manage, I feel like he's going to trust the veteran guy there, or even a guy like Chris Martin, maybe more than he would trust Alex Vesia. So we'll see on that one. Probably enough talk about those ones there. One quick housekeeping thing. Matt Moreno just texted me to let me know about this. you've been watching this, so you have not seen this yet, but he just let me know. We just posted a video on the Dodger Blue YouTube page talking about Trayce Thompson, Hanser Alberto, hyping Thompson up. Trayce Thompson sharing what Mookie Betts said to him after his catch. So some good stuff there. Check out the Dodger Blue YouTube. Again, Dodger Blue 1958 on YouTube. Subscribe, ring the notification bell as well. And just along those lines, I mentioned it earlier, Sunday night, 9 p.m., we will be doing a live podcast. So make sure you set your calendars for that one. The Dodgers will be playing at 1:10 against the Marlins. We'll be on at 9, sort of previewing the week ahead. Starting Monday, we're going to start a new thing where I'll be posting daily videos, Dodgers Daily, looking at just short 5-minute previews of the night ahead. We're going to be talking a little bit about betting, some of the lines, what bets I like, guys to get hits, runs, overs, etc., etc. So Dodgers Daily, that's coming starting on Monday. And then Wednesday, we've got another one of our watch-alongs. So if you missed this last one, Playback is a service that is new. They're allowing folks like us to host watch parties. Basically, everybody goes into a chat room. We all get to watch the exact same feed, so we're all watching it at the exact same time. The quality was amazing the first time that we did this. There's a live chat room. You've got folks like me, Daniel, Matt, some other guests that we'll have throughout the time kind of talking from the stage, opportunities to bring folks on stage to ask questions. So it's amazing. This one, now it's public. So the last one was sort of a trial run, private link. This one will be open, so make sure you're following Dodger Blue 1958 on social media. We'll be able to blast that link out. The one catch is you will have to log on. So if you have access to it, you have to have access to a TV provider that gives you the ability to watch that game. You just log in, authenticate, and then you'll be able to watch. It's going to be amazing. So that's Wednesday's game. That's a 6 o'clock against the Brewers. So make sure you check out that. Tons of more live content, of course, coming after that. We'll have another live post-game show later in the week probably. So stay tuned for all of that. Here we go. Mark saying, "Can we get Vasse onto the watch along?" We're not. He might need a rest. I don't know. Did you have a take? I mean, that was. I want to go back and watch the Brewers mascot slide down that slide because I don't know what Vasse could have done differently to help himself on that one. Like I didn't feel like he really screwed up. It feels like that wall's way too close. Am I off?
Well, I don't know if you saw the other video, but he went down it twice.
Okay.
The first time, basically, you just got to go down at feet first, and you're okay. Like the second time, I don't know, like if it was something he did or just kind of how the slide worked, but he kind of turned sideways and went into the wall sideways. So that's where he went wrong. The video, the first video that came out of him doing it when he did not get injured. He did it right. He did it feet first, and he was okay. So I think he just kind of got a little sideways and then got his arm kind of caught behind him. But he was flying down that.
Yeah. Well, Pat McAfee had the clip on today, and they rewound it. I mean, like there was a moment where he wasn't all that far off from going up the bank of that slide. Okay, so I haven't seen the video. So he goes down it twice, and the first time is a success.
The first time was a success. So
why did he even do it a second time?
That's a good question because literally in the video of the first one when he went down it and everything was fine, at the end of it he says like I'm never doing that again, and then apparently he did it again and broke his wrist. So I get
and his ribs is there confirmation on the ribs?
I've 6 cracked ribs, but hey, credit to him. You know he's a trooper. He's still there. Interviewing Justin Turner right after, gets a cast on, is there for the game. So
unbelievable.
Credit to Vasse, and I'm sure he's loving all the attention he's been getting. So
yeah,
I know he's not loving the broken wrist and the broken ribs, but he got famous off of it.
Yeah, I mean it was like literally everywhere I looked on social media the next day they were talking about it. Would you go on the slide?
Absolutely, that'd be fun.
Okay, so the Vasse thing doesn't scare you at all.
No, you just got to make sure your feet are.
You're a big guy. I mean, you're a big guy. I don't know, like that doesn't. I don't know if that's built for 6'4".
I definitely think the bigger you are, the faster you go down it. If I had to guess.
Okay, Coach Charlie says in the comments that they wanted video of him from the angle of the landing, so that's the reason he ended up going on it a second time. So,
they definitely got that video, and that's a video they're gonna want to keep forever.
Whoever made that request, man, that person owes David Vasse a bottle of very expensive alcohol, in my opinion. So, hey everybody, we appreciate you joining us as always. It's good to be back. Again, for the stretch run from here on out, we're going to have tons of consistent content, more content than we've ever had. So make sure you subscribe, ring the notification bell, tell your friends, spread the word. If you're a podcast person, make sure you're checking us out on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify. Find Dodger Heads, click the follow button. We'd greatly appreciate that. And of course, as I said, DodgerBlue.com. We'll have a post-game report for today. Dodger Blue 1958 on social media everywhere. We appreciate you joining us. That's Daniel. My name is Jeff. We'll see you on Sunday night. Matt and I will be back for a live podcast. Until then, see you next time.